Good morning, good evening, good night, good day, everyone, whichever time of the day you're watching us today. And I have an amazing guest. I don't know how I got so lucky, but I got John Zentgraf for you today. And I'm sure Americans would say Zentgraf, but I'm sticking to my German version of it. And John is a legendary coach and also strategist who works with business owners and with entrepreneurs and investors. And he's also the co-founder of the legendary Evolve and Thrive business owner advisory panel. It's an advisory board like a mastermind board.
Mhm.
Welcome, John.
Thank you, Anna. Great to be here.
Great to have you here, John. Um, so let's start with the uncomfortable part or uncomfortable question. Why do so many business owners say they want freedom and then they build a company that collapses the minute they take a long weekend?
Well, I think there are two parts of that. One is owners are clear, and it's true they want the freedom. But then the second part is there's a big gap between wanting it and knowing how to get there. And if you look at most business owners, whether they're professionals in manufacturing, distribution, the trades, they're very good at what they do, but they rarely have had an education on how to in business maybe or even how to be a business owner. So everything is making it up as they go. And
Mm.
so they do truly want that, but there's a big gap in knowledge and awareness to make that happen.
Yeah, sounds fair. And speaking of advisory boards, I mentioned Evolve and Thrive.
Mhm.
So advisory boards sound smart, but plenty of owners would hear peer group and then think, oh, expensive group therapy. What do they get wrong?
So I think the reason they may think that is I think there are groups out there that end up being, expensive group therapy. And so I think owners can quickly ascertain whether that's the case by asking very good questions. And for us, it's about return on investment. It's about owners who come once a month for 4 hours getting a massive return on their time and their investment in that. So to me, it's the mission, it's the intention, and it's the formatting of the meeting to ensure that owners are getting that ROI. So a business owner can quickly ascertain what type of group it is by asking very good questions up front.
So I see we work with owners who want more clarity, more value, and more time back.
Mhm.
Which one are they usually lying to themselves about first? Because, we all want that, but
Yes. Well, I think our kind of tagline is earn more, work less, and enjoy the journey. So there are three things that usually are very difficult to put the and in there versus the or. So owners typically will give up, even though they want it. They will typically sacrifice their time and their lives to build wealth, build cash flow, build a successful business. So in my experience, that owners want freedom, they want the time off, they want to enjoy what they're doing more, but that's the first thing to go. That's the first thing that they will sacrifice to get the other things that they want.
Um, kind of a slightly different question. I know that a lot of business owners, when they talk about their success, they talk about revenue. I just reached 1 million plus, 10 million
Mhm.
plus. So that's a very common, popular point of referral. Um, you often talk about and care about business value rather than
Yes.
revenue. So, in your opinion, what are owners doing that makes their business look busy but worth less?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's very common. So owners are taught to maximize their cash flow, which is great. They bring home more each year, and they're taught that they can just multiply that cash flow times a certain number, and they're going to get a certain value for their business. The thing that's missing is the second half. How businesses are actually valued is the free cash flow that's available for a buyer and a
Mhm.
discount rate that measures risk of actually getting that cash flow.
Mm,
So there are companies that have fantastic cash flow, but the discount, the risk factors that get stacked up are so high that that
mm,
cash flow becomes worth zero or close to zero. So if owners really are focused on two things, one is cash flow, and then how do I mitigate or reduce all of those things that stack up that create a very big discount rate? then they're going to have a company that's worth value. But you can't have one without the other, or the company was pretty much worthless.
And I know you are a businessman yourself. You invest in entrepreneurs. So and you worked in turnaround, growth, private equity, and M&A fields.
Mhm.
So let's cut the nonsense. What is the fastest way for an owner to destroy exit value without even noticing?
I think the number one is their involvement or over involvement in the business. And it's very common for owners to have a very difficult time letting go, even when they have good managers. But I would say that the number one thing is that if an owner takes the point of view of a purchaser and they were to look at themselves from as an outsider's perspective, and they're involved in every aspect of the business, and if they leave or disappear, value is gone because they have the relationships with the customers, the suppliers, their employees. They may even have family members working in the business. So if that's probably the number one is the owner reliance on the owner, and then followed by that, you'd have customer concentration, uh, financial statements, and things that are not well put together or even believable.
Mhm.
And so they're the top ones that I see, you know.
I work with a lot of small business owners through Lalo, and quite often small business owners say, so the justification is nobody can do it as well as I can, or I'm
Right.
a perfectionist. So when a business owner says something like that to you, in your opinion, is that a leadership insecurity or a control problem that's dressed up as high standards or perfectionism?
Well, I think Anna, that's a really good question because I think generally they're right. You know, they're if in the 3 to 5 things, there's usually 3 to 5 things that an owner does very, very well in their business, and then everything else they don't. They can easily find other people that are better than them. You know, let's say you're not a bookkeeper and you try and do your own books. There's people that will do it better. But the 3 things or 5 things that our owners are really good at, no one is going to do it as well as them. And then the question the owner needs to ask himself or herself is, do I want that to limit me? What if I can find people that do it 80 to 85% as well as me, put processes and standards in place, and replicate myself to 85%? Usually
Mhm.
that extra 15% does not make a significant difference in value. It's usually perfectionism. So
Mhm.
if you can have a bunch of 85 percenters doing the things that you're best at doing, you're going to grow a pretty successful business.
So in the States, when I moved here, what I noticed very quickly is this value, this admiration for entrepreneurship. And I think it's one of the reasons the States is so successful with producing new ideas, innovation, entrepreneurship.
Mhm.
So part of being a successful entrepreneur is being able to hustle.
Mhm.
But at what point does hustle stop being admirable and start looking like bad management?
That's all these questions are they come up every month in our board meetings pretty much. So it's different depending on the business, the industry, and age and stage of the owner and the business. But generally, when a business owner, everyone, if they're starting it, is bootstrapping. Typically, people don't come into businesses with millions of dollars that they can just spend. So they're trying to build cash flow and generate excess beyond what they need to live. Once they get to the point where there's some excess, and they continue to do all the work and all the jobs, then the opportunity cost, which is what owners don't see, they see what they spend to pay someone else to do a
Mm,
job. I don't want to spend that because they're used to hoarding, kind of keeping the cash flow to themselves out of need. But once they get to that place where they have free cash flow, then not investing in other people to take that off of you is where they start to run afoul and where they start to not destroy value, but they could be growing a business faster, more profitably if they would just start
mhm.
delegating when they have that cash flow.
I think also one of the problems is business owners love to be able to say they're stuck in the weeds. They quite often brag about it. Fine, but who put them there? And why do so many keep watering the weeds instead of fixing the business?
There's a couple parts. One is in the beginning, if an owner is starting a business or even when it's newly acquired, there's not usually a lot of excess cash flow because they're paying down the purchase price. So in the beginning, they have to in many cases be in the weeds because they can't afford to pay a lot of other people to do things. The challenge is we get caught in habits and patterns and uh, trying to save money when that's very expensive. So it's great, I would say, great to be in the weeds when you have to be. But the distinction is really determining when you don't have to be and then getting
Mm,
out of the weeds. So it's a lot of it's habitual. And there's also a piece on in everything in life. There's a don't know what you don't know in business. If you don't know something and you don't know it, you can't do anything about it. So
yeah.
there's a lot of that going on with all the questions you've asked. That's a common denominator is owners don't know
Mhm.
that they don't know something, and then they're trapped, whether it's in the weeds, whether it's trying to build a company that has value independent of themselves, any of
Mhm.
those things. That's probably the biggest challenge.
Mm, interesting. I know you work with owners up to and also beyond the
Mhm.
2 million mark. What usually breaks fast as a company scales? Strategy, operations, team quality, or the owner's ego?
That's all good questions. So I think we work with companies. We have two levels of board. So the first level of board might be up to 2 million. The next level, the higher level of board might be 20, 30, 40 million. But the thing that keeps them from going from one level to the next, let's say our next level board, typically is strategy. And a lot of owners confuse strategy. They think it's like writing a business plan, which is
Mm,
very a lot of talk about in the weeds. It's a lot of things that aren't essential. But strategy really is where is point A? Where do we want to be? And grow that, expand that, make that bigger. It's not just a static thing. How do we blow that up to make it great? And then
mm,
here's where I am. What's the shortest and best line to get to that? So
mm,
strategy really is so that's if you're not clear with exactly where you want to be, and even hopefully make that better than what you think it can be, then that's the root cause in my mind, which is why I love strategy. It's the root cause of most owners' problems.
mm. Yeah, I can see that. So, what would you say are the biggest red flags that tell you a business owner is not building a company? They're just building themselves a stressful job with a logo.
I think the number one is they don't have the intention to do it, either because they don't know the drivers of value and the destroyers of value. They don't have that. They're not talking about typically, I want a business that is going to generate, again, they don't have an end goal. I want to have a business that I can walk away with $10 million or 5 million or whatever the number is. That's not the end goal. So there's not building to that. And then the
Mm,
two parts that I mentioned. So it's clarity of where they want to be. And then if they know that, and they know there's two components to driving that value. One is the cash flow, and one are the risk factors, and they are the biggest risk factor, which is what is the answer to that question. They are destroying value, and they're not doing things. They're building cash flow, which is the easier of the two, but they're not doing the difficult things. And that's really the red flag, is
mm,
they don't have the intention or the understanding of what it takes to get to that, not having a
mm.
goal, but then not knowing how to get there. That's the red
Yeah.
flag.
Thank you, John. Now I'll be grilling you with some personal questions. I'm not going to
Yes,
let you
please.
just escape and leave us. How did you become a business coach or coach to business owners and strategist? And what does strategist mean? We all, I think, are aware of what a business coach does, but I know that your title is business coach and strategist. So
Mhm.
what does that element mean and how does it manifest itself?
I think business coaching means a lot of things to a lot of people. And a coach, the definition of coach really is not adding anything. Really, the coach's job is to draw out of someone to identify their limiting beliefs and so on. So I like coaching, but it's limited. And there's a limited
Mm,
amount in my mind that coaching can do because at some point the answers aren't within the person, they need outside. And that's why I
mm,
don't really like the tag coach per se. I like
mm,
that and strategist because most of the time owners don't have the answers and just continuing to ask them questions doesn't help. So how I got here is I did my first startup in the medical area when I was 22, and I just met an inventor who, had the ideas on napkins, like that stereotype, and then started that and then sold that and did a turnaround in confectionery. My common denominator is low tech. I do not understand high tech. As long as I can understand what the business does and it's not going to change in 6 months,
mm,
I'm comfortable with it. So I've done a lot of different things and then formed a private equity model. In between all that,
mm,
I took a 2-year sabbatical and went back to Wharton and at the University of Pennsylvania, and my focus was pure strategy, which is what I
Mm.
love. And so I kind of have a little bit of education, a little bit of a lot of practical experience, and then forming an investment, small investment banking firm. So my business partner and I had done that for a bunch of years, and we just said, okay, we're ready for the next chapter. And I knew I liked to coach, and I knew I liked to help people with strategy. So that was the next evolution, is just doing this. And so forming a business model that involved advisory boards, strategy, and those types of things.
Do you feel there are clients who are uncoachable? I'll be honest, I have a friend and she does have a coach, and every time she comes from a coaching session, she talks about the recommendations her coach has made, and I always feel they're pretty good. But then, she fails to implement them and she's not very enthusiastic about them. So I'm not even sure why she keeps going back. But I feel she's kind of uncoached. She's been through several coaches. She
Mhm.
doesn't like any of the suggestions. She doesn't even try to implement them. So do you feel there are clients who are simply uncoachable? They are not in a frame of mind to be coached?
I think a lot of people think, oh, I'm going to apply to Evolve and Thrive to be on the advisory board, but really, I'm going to say maybe 60% of the people who want to be on a board actually do go on a board because of that very reason. Are they coachable? Do they argue with every point? Do
Mm,
they care about helping other people because it's the give and take? Do they care about other people and helping them? So that ties into your question. So, in that setting, we maybe have 65% of the people that would be good on a board. It isn't far off from the coaching for the same reason, or when I work with strategy. And I don't engage with someone because I'm interviewing them as well. If I sense that, then I'm not going to engage, because I'm going to tell them that I'm about return on investment. It's not going to be great return on investment. I don't care who they work with if
mm,
they don't shift that. And that conversation alone often has people step back and evaluate and reevaluate themselves. So a percentage of those folks then
mhm,
become coachable. And
mm,
the only other thing that I'll say is, a lot of times why people don't implement is coaches that don't necessarily know the nuts and bolts of business, or haven't run a
mm,
business, talk about more grandiose things like ideas and concepts. And an owner doesn't have time to play
mm,
around with that. And so they go back and it's like, oh, I have a great idea. I just went to a seminar, or I did this, or I got a coach, but they don't have time to break it into the nuts and bolts, and then they'll apply it.
mm,
So if it
mm,
can't be done in a way that someone leaves your meeting and has
mhm.
the steps and the plan, they won't do it.
Have you ever had a nightmare client? Obviously, without naming them, but are there clients where you think, oh my God, I was a complete waste of time, or the client is really not trying to help themselves at all. And if they just did that, the transformation could have been remarkable, but they're just in the way of their own progress.
I, I, the answer for me is no. And
Mhm,
I think for a couple of reasons. One is I'm very direct with people. I'm nice about it, but I'm authentic. Like, I'm not there just to have a nice conversation. I'm there if I don't see, whether it's a board member on a board or whether it's a client, if I'm not seeing them get an ROI, I'm asking why, what's missing. And then I'm going to them and saying, you're not getting an ROI. Why are you doing this? And
mhm,
and typically the other part is, I'm generally very good at, not always, but generally very good at understanding what's under the surface that's causing that. And
mhm,
many times we have invisible things going on from our past, trauma, childhood, whatever.
mhm,
And if you can identify that, point that out to them,
mhm,
then it's often transformative. So I don't, what'll happen is I'll work with them, help them identify that. And if I can't, I will suggest that we disengage because they're not getting a return on investment.
mhm.
So to me, it's painful to work with someone that isn't getting an ROI. And I don't really want to be in that place. Even if I like them, it doesn't matter if I like them, I don't mind difficult personalities. That's great. That's fine. It's really if they're gonna get something from it.
Mhm. Yeah, you feel you're not achieving anything either, so it doesn't give
Yeah.
you any sense of, I guess, of like satisfaction working.
Yes. Yeah, that's why I do what I do. I love to see people transform their lives and their businesses. So to me, it's, everyone likes to make money, but that's one component. And you can make money a lot of ways from a lot of different things. But to
Mhm.
me, if both aren't there, enjoying working with someone and seeing them transform,
Mhm.
then I'd rather go work with someone else.
Mm. Yeah, fair enough. So I know that recently you've been spending a lot of time in Germany,
Yes.
in addition to other places. So how much German have you picked up so far?
I have spoken, I speak a little bit now, but we have a goal of my spouse speaks German fluently, German, regaining German citizenship, so born and raised and through the first years. So what our goal is to have as many languages when we travel under
Hmm.
our belts. So, the request is for me to really spend more time with Spanish
Hmm.
for
Oh,
all the countries we go to that
yeah.
are Spanish speaking. So
Hmm.
I'm really not trying to become fluent in German. I just need to get by in Germany.
Hmm.
But the goal is for me to be the fluent one in Spanish,
Hmm.
and we have German covered.
Yeah. No, I love German. Obviously, it's a
Yes,
difficult language to learn, to be fair, but at the same time, I feel when people move to Germany, I have some friends in Hamburg who are Americans who move to Hamburg. There is no need. So some of them don't learn any German
right.
beyond like 50 or 100 words and just need in day to day because most people actually do speak English. So
Yes,
you can get by with English only. Unlike, let's say, in France, you would get stuck pretty quickly.
right. Well, they have that for many years in school, so they're very, very good English. And my goal is to be able to have at least initial conversational German out of
Mhm.
respect for
Mhm.
them and their language, not to go to their country and say, well, you should speak English.
Yeah.
Is to at least have minimal conversation, whether you're ordering or just having basic, hello, how are you, type
Mhm.
of conversations. That's my goal, is not become fluent in reading and writing, but because that's covered. But
Yeah.
for me to take, I'm handling the German side. I mean, excuse me, the Spanish side.
Mhm. Yeah, I understand Spanish pretty well, but I'm not fluent in Spanish,
Right.
even though my vocabulary is very broad. So I can read a book without a dictionary, or I can watch a movie and I don't really need a lot of support
Right.
understanding, but I just never been exposed to speaking Spanish. So during COVID, I actually wanted to go to Costa Rica and spend a year or two there and just be based there and push myself to speak Spanish. It just never happened. But looking back, I really regret not going. Spanish actually my favorite language. I would love to be fluent in
I
Spanish.
I do too. And we spend 6 to 8 weeks in different parts of the world every
Hmm.
year. And uh, Colombia, we were in Medellin, Colombia, and I picked up a good bit of Spanish there. And we alternate. We'll pick some other places.
Hmm.
And it won't take long to be fluent if I'm in the environment.
Mm. Okay, so my last question for you. What are the three countries on your bucket list and why? Like, are there three? I know you're well traveled, you enjoy being exposed to new cultures, new environments. So, what are the three countries you're dying to see and why?
I love Europe. So
Mhm.
I backpacked through Europe, but did not get it's just a sampling of each place. So in Europe, I would really love to see Austria. I spend more and more time in Austria. I think it's beautiful, beautiful.
Mhm.
Vienna, just Sound of Music type of thing. So that would be one. I love. I would say the continent, like Africa, but
Mhm.
in the southern part, I've done a safari, but I would do it differently. I would like to have that experience, but for longer and
Mhm.
more authentically, not with a big
Mhm.
tour company.
Mhm.
And then I love adventure type things. So
Mhm.
there's a piece of um, whether it is, and I won't say what it is, but it'd be more mountaineering.
Mhm.
So I haven't settled on where that is, but I don't necessarily want to do, K2, but I
Mhm.
want to be able to go in the mountaineering where it's technical but not overly technical. So I don't have that nailed down yet.
Mhm. Oh, I love it. Well, it was such a pleasure to have this conversation with you, John. Learned a lot of new things. Feel bad about my own, no mistake, shortcomings because it certain things you mentioned, I recognize myself, but I'm sure mure many business owners are in that situation. We always think that everyone else got it.
Yes.
and that, we are struggling sometimes, but I think we all have like question marks. We all have things we don't do well, could have done better, and don't have time to do, or think we
Right.
don't have time to do. That was very interesting. Thank you so much for your time. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, Anna. Always a pleasure to be with you. So thanks very much.